Hello, welcome to our kitchen. It is September here in Nebraska, and for me that means that we have a lot of produce sitting around waiting for me to get through it and preserve it. So here's some green beans that I did earlier this week, and I have a few more other things that I have to get through right now, and I thought I would just take you along and show you how it fits into our day. We don't do a whole lot of big canning days around here because that just doesn't work right now in this season of life, but it still fits. So some of the things that I have to get through are some peaches. So we ordered some Colorado peaches. We ordered 3 lugs, and last week I canned 2 of the lugs into just sliced peaches in a syrup. And I had to wait for some clear gel, which is like a modified cornstarch, to make some peach pie filling. So that's what I'm doing with this, and I'll take you along for that. And we have lots of tomatoes. That's always a big thing for us. We have lots of tomatoes waiting to be canned. And right now, this batch of tomatoes I'm gonna be turning into pasta sauce. I normally do pasta sauce using Mrs. Wage's packets, but I found a recipe that I'm going to try for this one. Since we do have garden veggies to use up, I'm going to try a new recipe. Some of the things I do with my tomatoes, the big things are pasta sauce and pizza sauce. And we have a lot of tomatoes, just more. I'll get you more, okay? Just a second. Quartered tomatoes. I have quite a bit of chili base left over from last year, so I'm not going to do any more of that. And yeah, so pasta. Oh, and we did a bunch of salsa already. Okay, so we did salsa, so if we get some more, maybe we'll do some more salsa. But pasta sauce is what I'm doing, and I'll just take you along with that. And then we just have a lot of peppers as well that I'm going to try freezing to add through meals through the winter. So that'd be fun to take you along, show you just what the summer kitchen looks like here at our place, and I think it'll be fun.
Starting with the peach pie filling, we have to first blanch the peaches. I find it easiest to just boil a lot of water and then pour it over the peaches. Let them sit for a couple minutes until the skins are coming off a little easier, and then run cold water over them to cool them off.
So now that they're blanched, I am going to just take all the skins off. They come off pretty easy if you do it right. And some of these do have a few bad spots, so I will cut those off as well. Oh no, what? Well, pick it up. I need about 6 quarts worth of sliced peaches. So I kind of guessed, and so we'll see if I have enough, and if I don't, then I'll have to peel a few more. I'm just going to slice them pretty thin, and they just kind of fall right off. These peaches, the flesh on the inside isn't like hard at all, so I'm not going to take that off at all.
I'm adding 2 to 3 quarts of water to this pot, and I'm going to bring it to a boil so that I can put the peaches in there. It helps to pre-boil the peaches just to get all the air out of them. After the peaches boiled for 2 to 3 minutes, I ran them through the strainer. That way I can reserve this peach cooking liquid just to save a little bit of the flavor. I am going to put a lid over it just to keep that liquid warm because we will be using that later.
So now I'm just going to put 7 cups of sugar in here. 3. And then it's 2 1/4 cup of this clear gel, which is like a modified cornstarch. You can't use regular cornstarch when canning, so you kind of have to use this if you're going to can pie filling.
I get mine off Amazon. The brand is Hoosier Hill Farms. It's the cook type, and it's worked really, really well. So I will link that in the description box below in case you want to make your own pie filling.
Then I'm going to take the liquid that I got from straining the peaches, and I'm going to put 5 1/4 cups and add it back into this pot with the clear gel and the sugar. Whisk it together and put it back on the stove. You want to make sure to whisk it all, get lumps out. So while that's on the stove, I'm going to get the lemon juice and seasonings ready. So it's 1 3/4 cup lemon juice. And I'm just going to get this done so that way when the mix starts boiling, this is ready to be put in there. I don't have to do it one at a time. And the lemon juice is required for safe canning, so don't forget it. I'm going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of almond extract, and a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Just mix that together and it'll be ready to go.
Now that the mixture is boiling, I'm going to add that lemon juice and spices and return that to a boil. Whisk it in good, and then add the peach slices once it is back to a boil. I stirred them all in, and once it started to simmer, it is ready to be put into the jars. So I already had them prepared, cleaned, and warm, and so I could just fill them up. I'm leaving a 1-inch headspace, and pie filling seems to siphon out more than other things, so I really make sure not to overfill my jars when doing pie filling. Then I'm just going to get all the air bubbles out by using a little tool, or if you have a knife, and then clean the rims, especially because this stuff is kind of sticky and jelly. And then I'll put my clean lids and rings on, and then tighten them to just finger tight. And then they're ready to go into the canner. The water is boiling in my canner, so I'll just put these each in. And the baseline processing time is 30 minutes, so I add 5 minutes to adjust for my altitude. I had a little pie filling left over, so I thought it would be fun to make a little peach crisp. I could have probably fit it into a pint jar, but I just didn't really feel like doing that. So I put the pie filling in a pan and made a little crumb topping. So I like to use flour, some oats, I believe it was just old-fashioned oats, and some brown sugar. I give that a little taste quick before I add the butter. And then I work the butter in, just to get it a nice crumb topping. Put it on top and put that into the oven for 45 minutes or so. And it baked while the canner was going. Added a little scoop of ice cream, and it was the perfect way to end the day. I just love having these pie fillings on hand, whether I want to take something to a family gathering or a holiday. These things simplify the process and still allow me to take something so yummy and homemade. And I just love having them tucked away in my pantry. And speaking of which, I need to take them all down to my canning room so I have the counter space to work on the next project. It is the end of preserving season, so my shelves are getting a little bit full. So I did have to move some things around to make some more room, but I was able to do that. So now I can put them where they belong, and they'll sit tight till I'm ready to use them. Now it's a new day for some pasta sauce.
Okay, so like I said, I normally use Mrs. Wages packets, but I'm gonna try a different recipe since we have a bunch of veggies to use. And for one batch it calls for 25 pounds of tomatoes. So I'm going to weigh out that and see how many pounds of tomatoes I have, because I'm not really sure. If I can do a double batch, that would be great. I have some more tomatoes in the garden that I need to go pick as well. All right, so there's 10 pounds. So I'll just keep doing this and see how many tomatoes I got. So here's my big bowl. Let's see, it's about 25 pounds. There's a little bit more than 25 pounds because some of these have spots and I know I'll lose some to cutting bad spots off. So I put a little bit more than 25 pounds, but quite a few tomatoes.
I always start by putting them in cold water and just washing them off, just making sure any dirt or debris is off of them. And we got a good system going where my little helper would hand me the tomato and then I could core them and cut them into chunks.
Leave it alone. It's a bad tomato.
Lots of good conversation happens here, and also I usually put a towel at my feet because somehow a lot of water ends up there.
So I am cutting these into 4, these bigger ones, partially because I run them through a KitchenAid like mill strainer, and so it's got to fit in the attachment and it fits easier if they're cut a little smaller. But also some of these, and I've seen these before, but I've noticed some have spots on the inside even though they look perfectly fine from the outside. So I guess I'm just hoping if I cut it into 4s, I'll at least see if there's a bad spot somewhere. So that's something to remember, is that sometimes the inside there are bad spots even if the outside doesn't show anything. So it's always best to at least half it. It's certainly a little more tedious, but it would really, thank you, hate for a bad spot to ruin the batch. So just to show you what I mean by that, this tomato looks perfectly fine on the outside, but you can see right there that it's got a black spot and is not good. So that is what I mean. So here are all the tomatoes we just cut up. That's one batch of 25 pounds worth. And now we will go through this batch. It'll be another 25 pounds. And we even had a few more tomatoes in that, so I still have to figure out what to do with those.
I basically just got this new apron as it's a little flowy and works well with the baby bump. And this whole week of preserving has really put it to good use.
So it is the next day. Once we got done prepping and cutting and coring all of those tomatoes, my husband was almost home when it was getting late, so I just decided to put all the tomatoes in the fridge and start today. So I'm just going to puree them and add all the ingredients, and then we will be making pasta sauce. So I like to use for sauces for tomatoes this attachment from KitchenAid. It's actually 2 separate attachments. It's the like a meat grinder or food grinder attachment, and then I also had to get a vegetable and fruit strainer. So it kind of sucks that it's 2 different deals, but when you do a lot of this stuff, this makes my life so much easier. I know they have attachments like this for like the Cabela's meat grinder and some things like that, but I really, really love it. And that's why I didn't blanch my tomatoes or skin them, because this will take the skins and the seeds out. So you just have to set it up right. I would just have the pot here so that the sauce can come, the puree can go into my pot, and then this will catch the skins and seeds that come out this side.
No, I dropped it.
You dropped it, yeah. Oops. I'll turn it on first. Pick it up.
This process can take a little while, but I find it to be so much less tedious than like peeling all the tomatoes by hand. And it's kind of relaxing just watching the machine do all the work, and kind of satisfying watching the tomatoes turn into a nice pretty puree for sauce.
Have to do a quick little detour and shape this bread, this sourdough bread, before I start on the next 25 pounds of tomatoes.
So like I said in the beginning, I am just not in the season of life to really do big canning days. Even though they still feel like big canning days, they have to fit in with our daily life, whether that's making bread or supper or doing laundry. It's all kind of got to fit together, and there's just only so many hours in a day. So that might mean I just have to take a break in between things to deal with our daily life tasks. And I'm never really sad to have to take a break to shape some bread, because it's just one of those fun things that I really enjoy. I do have a whole sourdough video on my channel that shares the recipe, my recipe, and just goes more in depth with the whole process. So I'll link that in the description box below in case that is something you would find helpful and want to check out. And after getting a little more attention in this loaf and putting it into the banneton, we'll get back to doing the second batch of tomatoes and running it through the mill. I always keep the batches separate until I can add all the ingredients just to make sure the ratios are correct. Now that the tomatoes were all in sauce form and finally done, I could get to prepping all of the ingredients to add. Now, Mrs. Wage's packets are certainly easier than chopping a bunch of veggies, but when you have a lot of fresh veggies from the garden that could be used, it's kind of just hard to pass up. Now, we actually did not have a good garden year, but thankfully my mother-in-law did, and so she had these really big onions and we were able to use them instead of our little bitty ones. And thankfully we were gifted this little chopper thing that makes it so easy when having to chop a lot of vegetables like this. They have different blades, so smaller or medium sizes for like chopping these vegetables. And I also have one that actually helps me do carrots, so I really love this thing and it works really well for this, and my helper also loves it. Each batch needed about 8 cups of onion, so since there's a double batch, I had to do 16 cups worth. And now on to peppers. The recipe calls for 4 red bell peppers and 1 green bell pepper. We had plenty of green bell peppers and some that were starting to turn red, so I used them anyways. But I did have to buy a few red peppers from the store, and that was just fine. Honestly, I was really glad and relieved when all the veggies were chopped and added in so we could start with the easier parts of the process. Each pot needed 4 6-ounce cans of tomato paste, and I had 2 12-ounce cans for each. To make it simpler, 1/4 cup soy sauce for each, 3 tablespoons Worcestershire sauce, 2/3 cup brown sugar packed, 1/4 cup salt. We love a Redmond real salt, so that is what I use. Now the recipe calls for 10 cloves of garlic, and I have this minced garlic from the store, so I looked up a conversion online. I think it was like a couple tablespoons for each, but I can't quite remember. And then I'm adding 3 tablespoons oregano to each, 3 tablespoons basil, These are all dried and they can be altered to your taste if you want. And 2 teaspoons red pepper flakes.
So it is getting late again. And late enough that I think I'm just going to mix this up and put it in the fridge until tomorrow. It has to simmer still for 4 to 5 hours. I'm not gonna can it after that. And yeah, so I'm just gonna do that tomorrow. And while I could stay up and probably get at least it boiled down and closer to canning, I still have supper to make and bread to bake. Kind of a mess to clean up. So, and to get ready for bed or baths for someone. So, this is a more sustainable way, an enjoyable way of preserving for me in this season.
And after being tired from preserving most of the day, I still always look forward to making the bread, especially when I get to enjoy a little slice straight out of the oven with some butter. It doesn't really get any better than that. The next day when the sauce went on the stove, I put 2 bay leaves in both of the pots, and they simmered for a very, very long time, probably, I don't know, I'd say about 4 or 5 hours. I do it longer until I get the thickness I want. So once it was finally there, I put the 2 tablespoons of lemon juice in each jar, and I prepared my jars like usual. And again, the lemon juice is for safety, so don't skip that step. It took me a little while to fish out the 2 bay leaves, but once I finally found them, I was able to start filling each of the jars. I left a 1/2 inch headspace. Now this is how thick I let the sauce simmer down to. That's what I prefer. I did not get quite as many quarts as the recipe said I would, just because I simmered it down a little bit farther. But I would rather have that than runnier sauce. So it's up to you on how you want to do that. But this is what I did, and once I got them all filled, I was able to remove the air bubbles and clean the rims, put the lids on and the rings, and put them in the water bath canner. They need to process for 40 minutes, and I have to add 5 minutes for my elevation, so I can them for 45 minutes. Out of all the things I can, processing tomatoes definitely takes probably the most time. But it's hard to beat home canned pasta sauce, and we just love having that taste of summer in the dead of winter. And now that the tomatoes are all finally done, we can start on our last preserving project for the week. We had quite a few peppers, and we got a lot of extra from my mother-in-law as well. We grew brown jalapenos this year, so that is why they are not green or red. I have made jalapeno jelly and pickled jalapenos before, but for the most part we just usually enjoy them in the summer when they're fresh. But I thought maybe I could chop up some and freeze them since we had so many. So I made sure to put gloves on because yikes, if you've ever messed with jalapenos without gloves, then you know what I mean. But after I washed them and cut off the tops and split them, I took all the seeds out. I use a small spoon to do this, and it works pretty good. I'm not too particular, but I don't really care to have much for seeds left because I think jalapenos are hot enough. So after I get all the seeds out, I ran them through the chopper like usual, and that made pretty quick work out of it all. So I'm very, very glad to have this for these preserving projects. Now I decided to flash freeze these just to make things easier. I'm not sure if it's quite necessary, but that's what I did. So I put them on a tray and put them in the freezer for a couple hours just to freeze before bagging. And so while they were in the freezer, I was able to take down all the jars of pasta sauce and get them off my countertop and in their rightful place. Soon enough, I'm gonna have to find another shelf or figure out something to do, but there's really not a lot I love more than watching this shelf fill up with homegrown and home canned goods. Especially as we head into the colder months, it's always so refreshing to know that we've got a stockpile of such yummy food waiting for us to enjoy later. Another reason I decided to finally freeze some peppers this year is because we now have a vacuum sealer. And so I knew they would store better being vacuum sealed than they would in just regular Ziploc bags. So I thought it'd actually be worth the time. We did have rolls, and so I actually made some smaller bags because I don't want them in big sizes. So I am makeshifting little bags that'll both fit about 1 cup of peppers. So that worked pretty slick. We actually got the vacuum sealer last year when we made homemade brats with when my parents butchered a hog. It worked great for that, and we knew it would be really nice to have when freezing these types of things just to keep the freezer burn out and make them last a lot longer. So ours is a Nesco brand, and I'll link that in the description in case you're in the market for one. So once I had the bags made, I put them in 1 cup increments and filled them up and just did the vacuum sealer like I needed to. And just like that, it's ready to be labeled and thrown into the freezer. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing how canning and preserving fits into my life, and I hope your canning season is going well if you do that. I have some other canning videos, so make sure to check those out. And if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to do that so we can stay in touch. And until next time.